Hey, guys.
Hi.
Muted.
Claire, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Are we good to go?
We are.
Yeah.
All right. All right. It's 6:31, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Wastewater Study Committee order. And I think we're going to have everybody just go around and introduce themselves because some of us know everybody, but not. So we'll start with Brian.
Sure.
As
Brian Shea, 30 years in town this year, former select board member, served on advisory committee, registered civil engineer, and offering my whatever expertise I can to help me out.
Sam Stivers, 25 years in town. I was select board for the last 6 years almost now, previously on the zoning. Variety of other committees. Sir.
Alan Belniak, been in town for I think about 15 or 20 years. I can't remember when we moved here. Served on previously on the EDC, interested citizen in getting wastewater along Route 9 and potentially elsewhere, and also registered civil engineer in Massachusetts.
Okay, I'm Al Hamilton. I'm a member of the select board. I've been in town for almost 30 years, and I've served on a number of committees. And now, sort of moving this along.
Bob Moss, 6 years in Upton, 10 years in Hopkinton, 24 years in Westboro, and 6 now in Southborough. So I did the loop in 47 years of neighboring towns. Retired real estate developer. We moved up Sears, built house Sears Road 6 years ago, and enjoy being in town. And one of your good friends suggested that I might like to get involved with this group, which I thought would be a good idea.
Okay.
And
Bill and Claire.
I'm sorry, I beg your
Yeah,
pardon.
no, Bill Cundiff, DPW superintendent. I've been in town for about a year and a half. I do not live in town, so I'm an ex officio member, non-voting.
Excellent.
Claire.
All right, the first order of business. Claire, I'm sorry. Let's go. You certainly
That's
look
okay. I'm not physically there. So Claire Reynolds, everybody knows me except for Bob Moss. Nice to meet
Right.
you. And I've been in 45 years in town, been on EDC. I do advisory. I'm still doing advisory minutes, a whole bunch of stuff in town. So I'm kind of like Jill of all trades and master of none.
Now, I'll volunteer to take bare bones minutes.
excellent. Thank you. All right, I think the first order of business is to sort of organize ourselves. And traditionally, that is nominating a chair and a vice chair. And then I think we should probably talk about sort of meeting schedule, just the times that make sense for everybody.
Who wants to be chair? I nominate Al if nobody else wants to be chair. I second that. Third, fifth, sixth, fourth,
I think Al is the founder of this committee, so to speak, has my vote.
All right.
Unless Al, if you're too busy and need,
No,
oh,
that's okay.
all right.
Okay.
So I'll move that Al be chair. Second.
All those in favor? Oh, wait, we're remote.
Yeah.
We've got to do a roll call.
So I don't know, is anybody taking notes on the minutes or do you want me to do that?
Sam has volunteered.
Doing it for
Oh,
now.
okay, all right. God bless you, Sam.
Okay, so we have to do a roll call vote. So Brian?
Shea, aye.
Sam.
Stivers, aye.
Belniak, aye.
Aye.
Bob.
Reynolds, aye.
All right. Then I think we ought to have a vice chair in case the chair gets hit by a bus. And I would nominate either Sam or Brian.
It's up for grabs, guys.
I would nominate, I second Brian, Stan, no disrespect. But I wouldn't want necessarily 2 members of the select board on it, so that way it kind of like varies your leadership, that's all.
Certain sport. As long as you promise to look both ways before you cross the street.
Yes.
And don't get hit by
Yeah.
a bus, then yes.
I can't say that there isn't a bus out there looking for me though.
You know, I
You know
know the feeling.
All
So
right.
Al, you nominated?
So I'll nominate Brian as
Second.
vice chair.
So I second that. Yeah.
Okay, so then a
Second.
roll call vote. Bob,
Yay.
Al is yay. Claire
Yay.
Dominic, yay.
Sam, yes.
and
Brian,
okay,
yes.
all right. So the next item I think is to talk a bit about sort of when people are available, because I know some of you guys are working. It gets in the way of meddling into town affairs, and I know Bill would probably prefer to meet during the day if at all practical. And I was going to suggest, would it make sense to perhaps schedule meetings sort of for lunchtime? Sort of noon. As I know Alan had expressed some concern about, meeting during working hours.
Yeah, I would be open to noon. One other thing we've done in the past on EDC is alternating, like morning meetings 1 month, the evening meeting the other month, so it does break it up. I'm not sure if that's desirable. I'm just throwing it out there as another option.
Just so you know, Al, I'm okay with meeting after work. I'd probably do remote if I don't have to operate this thing.
We'll find somebody who
Yeah,
can become a qualified operator.
I know how to do that.
Okay.
Well, you admitted it.
Oh, yeah, I've offered services to Mark Purple for every meeting in town.
Oh, all right, excellent. Yeah,
My preference, I'm available anytime. As we go into the summer, I have a house down in Cape Cod and we spend like every week there. We're always home a few days. So it doesn't matter what time. My preference would be Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
But it'd be remote, available remote.
Oh, remote other
Yeah.
times, yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty flexible with advance notice.
So my preference would be either Tuesdays or Thursdays. That is if it were like early evening meetings.
What's your idea
If
of
we
early?
did, so like this time,
6:30?
6:30 or so, Tuesday, Thursday would be my preference. I could probably do noon meetings remotely.
Yeah,
There are occasions where there are lunch meetings that we have at the office as well, so I can't promise every.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking a fair number of meetings could be remote. I think we're gonna meet more than once a month between now and the end of
I'd
June.
rather do evenings if possible, so Tuesdays, Thursdays. Except for Tuesdays on site.
How often do you meet?
Once a month usually, but
Oh, no, so the select board meets twice a month. Yeah,
sometimes.
So as long as it's not, do they every other week? Is it?
it's
Pretty
the
much.
first Tuesday and the third Tuesday
It's
of
supposed
the
to be
month.
first and third.
And then,
Coming up for the next couple of months here. Tough because of town meetings.
Right.
Yeah. Over the summer. So.
What sounds like, or maybe it has to be a bit of a rolling.
okay,
We're not gonna be able to like say it like you guys do.
Schedule as we need it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally flexible.
okay,
My preference is Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I could do Thursdays. Lunch would be remote more often than in person, and I would probably prefer early evening like this.
Okay.
But can do.
okay, so we can do early evening and early evening can be remote as well.
And Claire, do you have any preference?
No, I really don't. I'll make it work. Just one suggestion, if I may. I think the first couple weeks, now that we've had our first meeting, I think that it would behoove everybody or the committee, so to speak, to schedule another meeting since we're in schedule mode right now for next week. And the reason is that if you want to get the expression of interest in before the end of the due date, we have to meet next week.
Well, would Wednesday evening next week work?
I can do,
Sure.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday or Thursday.
So it's gonna be the 19th.
19th.
Yeah.
I'm good next week.
Pardon?
I'm good next week.
Okay.
Anytime.
I can't do Wednesday.
I can't do Wednesday.
Could do Thursday.
You could do Thursday.
And I could do Tuesday.
How about Thursday at 6:30?
works for me.
Okay,
For me.
I might have to go remote on that.
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. All right,
I'm-
so we'll I'll get a meeting squared away for next Thursday. Okay. I thought it would be useful to just bring everybody up to speed on what Sam, Brian, I, and Bill have been doing over the last sort of 3 months. We've had a number of meetings. We've met with the DEP. We've met with one of the consultants, Weston and Sampson, who gave us he was very informative. And I've met with the health department and the guys there who know a fair amount about soils. And we have met with 4 of the developers along Route 9, who have been 3 out of 4 were quite positive. And one I'd say was neutral. And we've done some presentations to the select board. Our primary target here is that we are trying to make the town of Southborough more attractive for people to look to locate their businesses in. And that, we've heard repeatedly that the lack of wastewater services is a potential hindrance to that development. And so we're here. So our primary goal here is to try and make Southborough a more business-friendly community, with the ultimate goal of trying to reverse the trend where the tax burden is increasingly being shifted onto the residents. We'd like to move back to sort of an 80-20 split. Right now, we're at about 83.5, 16.5, and probably headed in the wrong direction. So that's the focus is Route 9. Doesn't mean that that's the only thing we can do. I think you have a pretty open charter in terms of that, but it's really about making Route 9 and our industrially zoned areas more attractive to business. And that's the principal goal. We're not looking to offer wastewater services to every street in town, at least not with this endeavor.
And Al, you might also emphasize with this school project coming up, it's going to be, looks like about a $70 million proposal from the town, maybe 10 million or so for the school, for the MSBA reimbursement piece. Huge impact on tax rates. We're hearing a lot of feedback from particularly seniors who say can't afford that. So as you look at possibilities for spreading that tax burden outside of the personal property tax, at least the only option I see is developing Route 9. And as we've talked with various developers, adding wastewater basically leverages the value of those properties, generates tax revenue there that shift the balance back in there toward commercial industrial property tax payers. I'm not aware of. I'd love if anybody has any other ideas for that. Make that happen differently or faster or better. I'm certainly open. That to me is the only possibility that we have here and do something significant in terms of reducing burden on the residential taxpayers. So that to me is sort of the underlying driving factor for doing this. And, in theory, ought to be possible. As Alex Fond is pointing out, tell you Route 9 story in Wastewater, heard that.
So
As you travel west on Route 9.
oh yes, as you travel west on Route 9, the first community you come to that doesn't have a wastewater treatment facility is Southborough. And you have to travel another 85 miles to the town of Goshen, population 960, which is well on the other side of the Connecticut River before you run into another community along Route 9 that doesn't have a wastewater facility. It's just kind of eye-opening.
We missed out.
Yeah, we did have an opportunity in the early 70s.
1975, we have a plan.
Yeah.
That's when the money was available.
Yeah.
And, again, I wasn't here and I'm not, no dispersions to those that made decisions at the time, because Southborough is what it is in part because of this decision that they made. But back then communities paid 10 cents on the dollar for the infrastructure that's in the ground.
And interesting, the planning board meeting, Jack Parlini was there, and his dad was actually on the select board in 75, and they passed.
Okay.
On the opportunity, and Jack said that the thing that drove it, negative side was people were deathly afraid that the town, put the wastewater in, the town might hit 10,000 people of population. And that number terrified people. So here we are. Well, but it's history is history, and got to deal with it. What's good. Yep.
When I moved into my first house in Upton in '79, they had just built their plants. And Upton it was very small then. It must have been like 3,000 people. Maybe it's 9 now or something. But my street, new subdivision, the first 3 houses on the street I'm with one of them. And we were the first people into the sewage treatment plant. Like they actually came up and they were running like water once a day down to get, stuff moving down. There wasn't any flow in the whole system.
Yeah.
So you got the first flush.
Well, that was it. I put a little note in there in the bottle, but I never got it back. So Upton, same thing back in the old days.
So in terms of process, one of the things that both Lombardi, who's one of the consultants we've had, and Weston and Sampson and the DEP have said is sort of the next step is to develop what's called a comprehensive plan. And a comprehensive plan really begins to identify a site and the sorts of facilities that would have to be on the site, and a plan for running lines out to a collection system, and possibly and then ways of dispersing the treated effluent, which is almost certainly going to be by ground. And there is an opportunity to get some money to cover that cost, and I think it's on the order of $200,000. There's a process called one-stop, and Claire is vastly more knowledgeable about the one-stop process than I am. So I'm going to let her sort of talk a little bit about what that is and what we have to do. We have a short-term deadline of the 26th of March to put a expression of interest in, and which is pretty straightforward. So Claire, can you sort of walk us through what's going to happen with the one-stop application?
Well, thanks, Al. That's the first time, that's such a compliment that I'm more knowledgeable on something than you are, because I can't believe that. Anyway.
Oh, you haven't talked to my wife.
Okay, so we have an excellent opportunity, and the one-stop grant is the state, and I have links to all of this stuff because we have some new members, and Al and Sam have done a tremendous amount of work. For example, if you have not seen the slides that they have used at the Board of Health meeting, at the Select Board meeting, I have those. I'll send them out. I also did, so as Al said, it's a 2-step process. One is called an expression of interest. This is just a very high level to introduce the state agency, the one-stop group, to introduce them to what your plans are, so to speak, and to tell you, one, if you're going in completely the wrong direction, they will tell you, or two, if you're in the right direction, which of the 12 departments under the whole one-stop umbrella will be the best one for you to apply to. Keep in mind that the only thing that they're asking for is a 500 character description of the project. Also, too, I can say from seeing previous ones, expression of interest reports that came back, they're really like two, 3 paragraphs. So don't expect a whole lot of direction. It just tells you, if you're not exactly sure which department, and I can show you that in a minute, which department you should be applying to, they will help you with that. The expression of interest starting in April, the final date is March 26th. And then there is about a 2 to 3, probably now, because it's getting close, more like a 3 to 4 day turnaround where you actually get a response to what you sent in. So that's excellent. After that, in April, there are several different online seminar office hours, so to speak. Which, in other words, if you're applying under what they call the Mass Works department, and you want to do it for infrastructure for either affordable housing or business and industrial development, that the direction that we're going to with the Route 9 corridor, they will actually allow you to submit questions ahead of time and they will address them. They've done light years ahead of improving the whole one-stop program. So these seminars, office hours, whatever you want to call them, there's about 4 of them that are going to happen during the time frame of April and May, and then in line for the final application that is due June 4th. Understand with these applications that they differ a little bit, and they're lengthy. Okay, they ask for a lot of information. A lot of information already exists. It's just a question of pulling it together. So this is going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time. However, there's that for assistance, and then there's the different samples that they have that pertain to what it is that you're looking for. I could continue going on. Let me know when to.
So the money that is offered, is it all grant money? Is there a percentage of it that the town has to pay?
They haven't provided that just yet. The two, for example, like the 2 grants that we had, which were under the Energy and Environmental Affairs, those both had a 25% match. Some of the matches on the grants are 10%. I don't know, they haven't said in terms of the individual grant from the particular state entity that you get the money from. They haven't put out yet what the match is. As far as the match goes, okay, so just as an example, the first grant that I had been involved with, which was for the downtown initiative, was for 50,000. You had, so it was 12,000, 25% of that was 12,500. I did not find it a problem in project managing it with coming up with that money. And it's a combination of, some of it was paid, for example, to Paul Pazinski after he left the town for his environmental write-ups and stuff. Some of it is actually in-kind services. So for example, if DPW, just use this as an example, had a staff member who could help, that actually goes towards the grant. And as Bill Cundiff did with the Route 9 grant, he actually provided me with the figures that said, this is X number of hours that were spent. And he also factored in your 30% for benefits. So it wasn't just an hourly, it was his request to Carlo, which was very, very good idea. So Brian, does that answer your grant match?
Yes. And I guess question to Al and Sam, has the town included anything, an article on this in the warrant?
Not
for
in this
this
warrant.
year, for
Not
this
at this
town
point.
meeting?
We've talked about doing that in the fall, maybe, by the time this actually.
And would
Yeah.
that timing work out with the application? And like, is there a time, if the application is submitted June, is there a time frame when things have to commence? Would that all be in line if we had a town?
What happens is,
fall
so after the June 4th deadline, during the summertime is when they start reviewing everything. And I mean, they can have, they have a lot of grant requests. So you don't actually hear anything until September or October timeframe. Your money then, usually then your go ahead after the contracts are signed between the state and the town. you get a start date of January, which would be 26.
So it looks
Yeah.
like we are going to have a fall town meeting. So have an opportunity to ask for money at that point.
But we don't know what that means.
We don't know right now, we don't, yeah.
So here's another question, or here's another answer to your question. One of the things that we have short term is the grant that actually has to get written. These grants are very, and I can send you a sample of the grant. I would highly suggest using a professional to do part of the grant. We have the money, okay, out of the fiscal year 25 budget. The money exists. There's a few departments that I know that have the money. We are 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. And if some of the departments have not, and I'm saying EDC planning, a lot of these others have not spent a good portion of the money that is in their consulting line item budget, then there's no reason why they can't kick that money in to pay. I don't know if it'd be like $3,000 or whatever. I really don't know about that, but you know, we can get that firmed up with whoever. I mean.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask there, like, how do we find out about that? Would that be like a question? to Mark?
Mark,
Yeah, we actually do have a grant consultant that we have hired who has done very little so far. And I think there's been some money allocated for that, so there's a little bit of cushion there as well.
okay, so I think.
The
So why
money,
don't,
the money exists. I think the other thing too is, when you talk about, the match, you know how you can, what is it? Yeah, encumber money. And I know it's for existing projects and I can check this with Carla, but you can encumber funds for, projects that have already been started.
okay, I'll get a hold of Mark and just, ping him on the subject of making the grant consultant available to us. And then,
Okay,
okay,
so here's my question on the grant consultant. I don't know what the person's been doing so far because unfortunately, the town does not have a list of grants that are either being in process, have been granted or whatever, which is something that we have the money to actually look to create that list.
They've been doing very little so far, actually. But
Okay, so then it'll be really very easy to do that. The grant consultant that the town has been working with was working, if I understand this correctly, was working on the ARPA money. I don't know what else that person was working on. The person that is needed, and you engineering guys know this, and when you take a look at the application, you need somebody with specific knowledge along the area of what we are applying for to use the money.
yeah, that's certainly true, I think. Yeah, let's make sure that we have somebody who knows how to write an infrastructure grant, because I think that's the broad category we're gonna, yeah, but yeah, okay.
So a couple things, if
Yeah,
I could
Bill.
jump in. So the ARPA funds, as everyone knows, have to be expended by the end of this fiscal year. So
it's have to be encumbered.
Well,
No, it's spent by, I thought it's spent by 26. Is it this year?
no, the contract signing had to be the end of last calendar year.
Okay.
They have to be expended by the end of this fiscal year. So just for timing.
okay,
Okay, the other thing, MassWorks, grants, my understanding, has always been that's for construction. So those funds typically go for construction. Brian, you may know that, Alan.
I think so. So I'm not positive.
I've been involved in projects where MassWorks money was used to supplement construction costs.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they're not allowable for studies.
Right.
But
I did a quick search here and there's one program under the One Stop that's called an Asset Management Planning Grant. That is through the DEP and it's up to 150,000 or 60% of the total estimated planning costs.
Okay,
So that could be a good candidate.
And I just looked, Bill, the ARPA money has to be spent by 12/31/26.
Okay,
If we have ARPA money,
so
we got a
the
little
town
more time.
accountant's fibbing.
If we do.
hey, well,
But
you're
the
probably trying to make sure you spend it.
Yes.
another key piece of data, you guys know better than I, but if we get a ballpark estimate of what this comprehensive plan should cost. Prospectively, you know, is it 100,000, is it 500,000? That would help us look for grant money potentially as well. And we actually have a resident who is involved in that department that reviews those grants. And I think he would be a great source of sort of some input in terms of what kind of questions we'd like to get answered, et cetera. He can't act officially, but he's willing to be a sounding board, I think. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
I thought I saw in one of the Lombardo emails that they thought that it was 1 to
Yes.
200,000.
Right.
But
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
sent in that, the letter that I sent out to everybody, that was in there.
but I think we need to pin down with more specificity. We don't need to, I think, to do that for the expression of interest,
Right.
but certainly by the time we get to actually asking for real money,
Yep.
we need to pin that down.
Can I ask you a question? Where along this path do you come up with like a budget now for the whole project? You know, you define your areas that you really want to do. And the consulting engineer, Ty and Bond or somebody will come up with what they think the whole thing will cost. And then I guess the next step is you go to the town meeting and see if they'll come up with whatever the financing part of theirs is.
Yeah.
So is it all this area here? What is it like? Then you give 6 months to an engineer like Ty and Bond to actually do a preliminary design enough to get really concrete costs. And everybody's agreed this is the scope. And here's what we estimate everything will cost. And then because you probably you're not going to go to DEP and try to get this permitted until you find out that the town's going to go along with it. You know, that will be the next step to go to DEP and get it all permitted.
Yeah.
The way I understand the process is you submit the expression of interest, you get feedback that helps you direct you where you should be going. And then you have that 2-month window to write the full application.
Mhm.
And that's the window where you offer a more detail. It's probably equal parts description and equal parts pitch. Because you want to get selected, and that's why I think what Claire was saying is it would be, or Al, you were saying, behoove us to get a professional grant writer because we need it constructed in such a way where it's basically more attractive than its peers.
But that gets us a couple 100,000 to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alan's correct.
At the end of the comprehensive plan, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the comprehensive plan is a bit like what we've done with Neary, where, you know, in Neary, we spent almost $1 million coming up with doing the research and the conceptual design. The comprehensive plan is more or less like a conceptual design.
Yeah, well, through the comprehensive plan, there will be cost estimating developed. There'll be like an analysis of alternatives, recommended alternative. I don't know that it's a comprehensive plan typically gets to the point where any plans are developed or specifications. It's really too early for that stage. But there are conceptual level costs that will be generated. So we'll have an idea then of the magnitude of the construction cost that we're looking at.
So how much money to ask for, sources of that funding, understand how we can make the whole project work. Enough information at that
Yeah.
point.
So who approves that plan?
Town meeting will approve money
DEP?
potentially.
Well,
So who you formally?
Yeah. Well, so we would, this committee or whatever, it would likely be the successor to this committee. And the select board would then decide whether they wanted to take that to town meeting to ask for the funding to build a plant and a system.
Yeah. And that plan is typically submitted to the DEP for
Yeah.
review, approval. I know that the DEP is part of a group that administers a state revolving loan fund program. So there are loan funds available to help assist communities with the undertaking of the construction of projects such as this. And having a DEP approved plan helps the scoring for that for the application through that loan
Okay.
program.
Makes sense. We're just broadly speaking, how many years do you think? Because I've been reading, no,
You're young enough to
I have a
figure
house
that
down in
out.
Chatham, and we're touring the whole town right now. They've been doing this for like 10 years, 15 years. And the plan is the whole town's getting sewered. And then Orleans has just started theirs about a year ago, or it's a year and a half ago, and they're running pipes all over town. And
Yep.
I think their treatment plant may have just opened or something. So everyone's doing this thing. And I happen to look at the Orleans. I brought some stuff, but it's premature for tonight to give you stuff on Orleans. But this comprehensive plan, they did it for like, they had a window of like 4 years they were doing it or something. You know, it was a long, you know, for whatever reason, or maybe, you know, people couldn't figure that out. So I don't know, you know, can you whip out a comprehensive plan in 6 months or?
So I think correct, I believe like the Chatham and Orleans, that's a different scope, a different reason for undertaking sewering. You know, the nitrogen,
Yeah.
and you know the nutrient impacts to you know the water surfaces on the Cape are the real driver behind that, and that is a townwide sewering effort. So I think that's going to be a more detailed undertaking than our involvement, which is more focused on Route 9, industrial and commercial properties along Route 9, to be able to increase the tax base. So I think
Okay.
it's simplified from that perspective. But still, it's something that's going to take, by the time, you know, you bring someone on board to start that plan to put a shovel in the ground. It's going to be a 2 to 3 year effort minimum. I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Well, I would have guessed that, yeah.
And 5-ish to get something built.
I was gonna say, we're 5 years from the first flush.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You know, we need to do this. That brings us sort of to the second piece, which is sort of beginning to talk about sites. And, you know, I know Sam has done a little bit of work in terms, we have started to look at the space between the lanes on 495, particularly north of Route 9, where 495 goes around a hill, and there's 30 or 40 acres of land in there, and which it may not be the perfect site, but the neighbors won't complain.
The soils actually look decent on the soils map, but you don't know for sure.
Now, is that just for disposal? Is that for?
Could be both potentially.
Yeah,
But
but certainly for the
usually-
plant.
I actually serve on a board with a guy who's the chief of highways or something at MassDOT. And I've asked him about it and he said, interesting, I'll inquire about it. He said, I have no way of predicting that because they've done things that I thought were crazy and other things that are slam dunks that they turned down. So it's hard to predict. But they do have a real estate division that is in charge of leasing MassDOT property for things. And if you drive west on 9 underneath 495 there, you'll see there's a chain link fence and a dirt road going north up there to a radio tower. And so there's buildings around it. And this guy I talked to said, yeah, that's something I manage, but I don't remember what that is. I'll check. So I don't know if that's possible or not. You don't ask, you don't know. But at least there is land there that one might consider doing something. And the other piece too, by the way, is that we've actually talked with Westboro and tangentially with Marlboro, but apparently both Westboro and Marlboro send their effluent to the Assabet River. And DEP apparently has said no more surface water discharge permits, or at least very difficult to get that done. So we're looking at groundwater discharge. And so you need, again, 10, 20 acres or so forth.
So that was my question. I know clearly there's no design been done at all, but just for a town the size of Southborough, can we have a range of what we need for acreage for a site? I'm guessing it varies by population, but maybe it varies by some other variable.
How many million gallons a day? the plans that we have so far are very high level, say something like 500,000 to 1,000,000 gallons a day for Route 9. And again, you guys know rules of thumb better than we do, but they're talking, 10 acres or more.
10 to 15 for,
Okay, discharge there. But the other interesting piece is that Westboro actually has a wastewater plant out by building 19 or whatever it is.
Ocean
Ocean
State.
State, yeah, Ocean State and Tractor Supply out there. And they actually serve Shrewsbury and some for Hopkinton. And they've actually, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they have like 5 million gallons a day capacity. They've actually committed 7 million gallons a day. So now that's coming due and they're struggling to say, well, how are we going to expand that capacity? And that's not an obvious solution there. So one thought is that if we actually could build more than what we need and have it a regional structure, that often helps with the grant money, certainly. And Marlboro actually serves Northborough as well. They'd like to expand as well, and not clear that they've got easy capacity to expand either. So if one could propose something that said, here's something that would provide support in some way for Southborough, Westboro, Shrewsbury, Hopkinton, Marlborough, or Northborough, that gets more interesting for the state and grant money, we think. But again, no direct input from the authorities on that stuff. So,
Yeah, the two things really quickly. The reason I was asking about the size is clearly we shouldn't be looking at parcels that are smaller than 10 to 15.
Right.
Or if they are, then they need to be adjacent because maybe we can work something out.
Yeah.
And secondly, from what I understand too, is that there is some element of, I don't know if it's increased interest or puts you higher on the stack if you propose something for one stop that's regional versus
Yes.
like solely. So
we've heard that as
yeah,
well.
so we should.
Yeah.
We want to increase our chances. Things. It sounds like the conversations have already started, so that's great.
And the discharge is interesting too, because next door here, we got 40 or 50 acres of fairways and whatever that need irrigation water. There's an irrigation project.
So that needs irrigation water for a limited number of months per
Yeah,
year.
right,
though.
time.
And you got a wastewater treatment plant that's gonna operate all 12 months.
That's right. So it's
So
not perfect.
there's
Plus,
a
there's a-
challenge there.
There's a conservation restriction on that property too.
Yep.
That is-
that's actually a question I had for you guys, which is, and I think it's worthwhile that we should actually talk to the golf course committee to at least brief them that, this is something that's in the air.
But really ought to talk to the trustees and conservation commission about whether it's possible, because they're the ones who actually manage the structure.
Yeah. That we can do both actually. But one question I had is, a lot of the disposal systems use some form of drip irrigation. And is it possible to put drip irrigation in, say, on the golf course in a less than intrusive way? I'm familiar with drip irrigation in agricultural contexts, and you can actually, there are machines that'll run slits and drip lines down, but I don't know what it is for wastewater.
My plant at Madison Place is drip. And that's 27,000 gallons. And it's probably on 2-acre full leaching area. We brought in $500,000 worth of sewer gravel to make it work. But so what up there is the field you see from Route 9 below the apartment buildings.
Yeah.
That's the leaching area. And the perks, the drip helps also if you're on slopes, versus gravity. But what we did there was, you had your sewer gravel all graded out and you just put all your drip lines in, staple them in and put the junctions and all that. And I think we put either 4 to 6 inches of loom over the top, and that's it. And then you really don't allow any heavy use or something or anybody, so it'd be hard, I would think, on a golf course. They use them down in Florida all the time. I'm familiar with them, but they're right in the irrigation line, and sprinklers.
Yeah.
They're shooting it out all over the place and they percolate all year. I would think this would be a real bad thing with frozen ground for 3 months.
Well, I was just gonna, your Madison Place, is there concerns with freezing on that or?
No, because it
it's
actually is
used-
warm water.
Okay,
Don't ask me why, but it comes out like 70 degrees or something and has no problem percolating. But DEP, I guess, has figured that out. That, you know, you have great gravel, the sand, you know, sewer gravel right underneath.
Yeah.
So you don't have a tendency of water to build up for frost.
Yeah.
And there's enough heat out of that. And they're pretty close. They're only like maybe 2 to 3 feet for like 1-inch lines or inch and a quarter lines. There's a lot of them.
So sounds like it would be fairly disruptive to the course, though.
Oh, yeah, I don't think you
Create
can get,
the
because it's, you
sub-base
can't just
that you
like
need
have a guy
for
pull
this
the
to work.
lines up and down the fairways. It's a very organized, you know, I mean, it's a very planned out situation, you know, there's lines and the materials and the layers and the, you know, like the septic system.
Yeah.
You know, same thing. But we're
So that's quite a bit different than if you're doing that in an agricultural context where you put the line in and you don't worry that much about it, although the effluent in your system is going to be different than the effluent that comes out of a plant, I believe, or maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, there's a certain level of, I don't know what the total flow is at Madison Place, but
27,000.
27,000. So there may be comparable levels of treatment that
And I say you could drink it, but you know, the engineer did, I took a sip in front of me.
Fell over. I'll stick to the NWR.
I don't know, you know.
Just make
Sure,
sure.
sure it wasn't,
When I played golf down in Florida, I could smell it, you know, on the grass, so I don't like that idea. But when we talk, we're really, I think you're gonna end up looking for, you know, 20 or 30 acres at EMC or up at DePietri's place or I don't know where else you got in mind. But I think if you really want to use a golf course, you gotta take the fairway away and treat it like a septic system, figure out the perk rates. Perk rates are huge on this thing, by the way. I had like 12 to 14 or 12 to 16, 15 bit of perks up there. And so your design goes, as soon as you have something over 50, you can go up to 15 if you're 15 to 10. But as soon as you get like one perk out of 20, there's 17, the whole thing goes to 20 minutes an inch design. And it goes up pretty much proportionally to it's the size compared to the changes in these perk rates. So if you can find like a Cape Cod or even over, I think some areas over by EMC that are like sandy gravel, you might need 10 acres. But if you have stuff like a lot of places I've ever worked, and even up there, you might need 25 acres. So soils is a big deal on the size of these, you know, distribution areas.
So to piggyback on what you were saying earlier, Sam, is in addition to looking at a size as one of the criteria, 10 to 15 acres or something, so we think we should look at the soils map and see where are there moderately sized tracts of land that are undeveloped or ripe for development or something like this, and B, have favorable soils such that we could get better perking such that we need a smaller area.
Yeah, I've started to look at the USDA soils maps that are online and that only sort of in that area, the 495 zone, and the ideal spots, like the spots in between the ramps, those big circular areas, unfortunately, those are all heavily disturbed, so you got to kind of.
And Mascot is unlikely to be okay with that if the traffic is around there and knows what's going on. So,
Yeah, but then some of the sites in between do in fact look reasonably good. You know,
When everyone sees what they're doing down there now, there's nothing not disturbed, you know, in that interchange. And I imagine if you're here in the 1960s or late 70s, early 70s, when you're building 495, I would just suspect the whole thing was disturbed. You know, that they didn't just like cut it like a little subdivision road where you went 5 feet beyond at each side. You know, there was so much cuts and fills and
they blasted so much.
blasting and everything, you know, that it'd be tough to find a virgin area in between the highways of it, the little lanes.
but that's, I think, part of the comprehensive plan would identify the potential locations, I would think.
Well, identify tests.
Try to come up with feasible options for doing some of the steps.
Because if you're not able to utilize the area, say, you know, between the lanes on
Right.
495 and you're driven to a parcel on Route 9, that's one fewer parcels available for commercial industrial development.
You know, I think at that point you start looking at whether, you know, there's something in the EMC area. Now, the EMC area would actually make it probably easier to do something with Westboro because a big chunk of the EMC land is actually in Westboro.
Yeah.
And,
On the other hand, those guys are buying that to leverage it for uses,
well,
rent paying uses, but they're less likely to say.
But that doesn't mean
they're gonna have to dispose of waste one way or the other, so.
Right, and also I think from a height differential. Could you kind of come down Route 9, so if we're looking to get effluent toward Westboro, that's gonna be some significant pumping.
Although you might go down, it comes out on Flanders Road down the bottom. And then Flanders Road's kind of dead flat all the way down to Route 30 in Westboro there. That's a pretty good route. I did a lot of work with the EMC land when you guys came up with or your governor, our governor, came up with the MBTA stuff. So, I'm friends with the guy that bought my Madison place. He's a big apartment guy. And we put a bid into EMC when they were selling a parcel specifically for the MBTA. And so I got involved, drew up plans over there. It was probably like 30 acres or something. It was really dead flat right near Madison Place. It'd be a great place. And then they had a residential piece in the back that either could buy it together or it was like 20 acres and they were proposing to put like 25 lots between some old subdivisions back there. I don't know how it landed, but I keep hearing rumors, you know, causing the big building 32 sold.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's an agreement to buy the whole rest of it. But I haven't seen anything sold. But if push came to shove, the town could actually just take that piece, I would think. You know, not that I don't want to say that but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Or you know, jump on it now, not now, or 6 months from now. But what I also did when you came up with that zoning, and I keep saying you guys, you didn't do it, you're victims here. I went up and down Route 9 because I had two different developers that I was retired, but they wanted me to find a place and permit it and they give me a chunk of the action and stuff. So I went through every piece on Route 9 where I could build an apartment complex of at least 250 units. And there aren't many, I can tell you that right now, because a lot of stuff is, you know, got wetlands and the biggest thing was sewage. You know, you just knew you had to build another plant and it was has to be X number of feet and you were going to use up, you know, a 30-year parcel for your sewage treatment. But it wasn't an issue over there. They have a lot of flat land over there and, you know, considerable distance from wetlands and stuff like that. But up and down Route 9, it'd be hard to find a site. I think a great, you know, because I'm assuming that it just looks, you know, some of those buildings I walk behind, the office buildings, there's a lot of wetlands all up in those areas. And usually when there's a lot of wetlands around, it's probably not gravel underneath or really good perking rates. So I went right up to Bartolini's driving range and back.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, EMC by far, if you're going to build an MBTA community, that 100 times the best site was right there. But to me, that's the best site by far. Because even I was also involved with Petrie's place up on the other side. Because that was in play when I was buying Madison Place and Platy was selling that at the time. So I looked at that. That's all integrated, you know, like the reason their plan went all over the place is there's a lot of wetlands and stuff up there. And a lot of vernal pools. And it would be, I'm sure you could find a leaching area with all that land. But I don't think the soils are that great up there myself, based on, I've walked the whole thing. So a lot of hiking through woods and thickets experience, right where we're talking, EMC is like by far, in my opinion, the home run to the leaching area.
And one other sort of footnote here, we actually had looked pretty hard trying to figure out what the MWRA system. And the answer to that is flat no.
What's this on the
MWRA system through Framingham?
Yeah, I heard that.
The MWRA actually has a lot of capacity at Deer Island, but getting from here to Deer Island is the constraint. And particularly because of stormwater. their system can handle the wastewater, but they've got some real stormwater issues with combined sewer overflows between here and Deer Island that they're desperate to fix. But there's a list of people who want more capacity at Deer Island, and they basically said, no, can't get it done. So it would be ideal if we could hook up to Framingham there, but that's off the table.
Which was the plan from that 1975
With
list.
in DC, we could have looked into it. That's right.
Right.
Well, I think based on what you're saying, and I think we need to follow up with Mass DOT, and it's probably would be productive for one or two of us to have a conversation with the Atlantic management guys, who seem to also see whether there's a way we can work together. Atlantic management is the group that's bought Coslin and maybe interested in warrants to see if there's something that's mutually beneficial. And I think actually reaching out to Westboro again is probably
I could also call Orleans, ironically, their plan was they needed 2 leaching areas to accommodate the total phase 1 and phase 2. There's a relatively small, it's like 375,000 gallons, because they're only doing like 40% of the town, where Chav's doing the whole town, it's a bigger town. But one of their 3 areas was on Route 6 at the interchange in Orleans, going into Orleans, was one of the leaching areas. It was the Route 6 interchange, it was called. So I can call them, just FYI, just so we know if the Mass Highway plays ball with these things.
oh, that
If they ever used it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer, I couldn't from what I wasn't to spend too much time, but I can just call the sewer office there tomorrow and ask, where's your leaching areas?
Al and I talked with one of the Westboro Select Board members who actually just got to be elected this week. And he, I think, offered to put us in touch with the Westboro Sewer Commission. Thought about this at the right time. So that's a conversation there.
yeah, I can reach out again to do that. And I think it might be also useful to reach out to Marlboro.
Yeah, more officially.
Yeah.
One of the things that Al mentioned that we didn't actually talk to Weston and Sampson previously because they did one of the other reports. I think it'd be interesting to talk to the Lombardi guys.
Yeah.
To get them in here to talk to this group as they've had now experience with this, and so we get a sense from them about what the right next steps are, what's involved, and what they might be able to do to
Would they,
help us.
would they come talk to us pro bono? Or
I think they will.
yeah.
Mark Weston Sampson basically leads the marketing effort. We're looking potentially to hire somebody. So I would guess they would be willing to talk, but those are the two, for me, at least obvious candidates to get some more technical input from near term and longer term potentially. Yeah, I mean, if there are other people, Brian, you or Alan or Bill know that would be good candidates to, provide technical input and maybe get involved. Find more people with the project.
Yeah, Claire has actually spent some time trying to get Lombardo here to talk to us, and I think this, if we can task her to see if we can set some times up, we'll do that typically by Zoom. That was what we did with Weston and Sampson.
Yeah, if you can just let me know if you want to do it for next week's meeting, if you want to do it for the following week. He's very interested in talking to you, and I can guarantee you will be really very, very impressed.
I got a question for the two of you guys as people who are actually in this business. I sometimes have mixed emotions about, are you better off trying to find a big firm that has a lot of resources, but is used to doing things on a big scale? I've worked for both big and small firms. If you find a small firm, sometimes you get more interest, focus, attention, etc. But maybe you don't have the breadth of technical bench there to get it done. You guys have any leanings on that in terms of where we look for help with a comprehensive permit? But Bill also has had experience with this as well.
Sam, that's a great point, and I can guarantee you, when you see the background of the projects that Lombardo Association associates have done, it's very, very impressive. He's done all this stuff. You know, I use the analogy that you want somebody who's older and has a lot of experience. Weston and Sampson was good to deal with. I think one of the things that people have to take in mind too is with a larger firm, they have a lot of turnover. Whatever. But I just to cut to the chase on this is I really recommend, particularly if you haven't, I don't know, give me a show of hands. Who has read the Lombardo action plan? Yeah, okay, so so there's still a few people who would benefit by it, and then the question that I have will be handled in the last section. Just how do all these different documents that we have all get pulled together in a location where you guys can all access them, because there's a lot of stuff that's out there.
We did a OneDrive thing with the town, I think, to set that up.
Yeah, I can put everything on OneDrive if that's, good, that works out for everybody.
There may be others out there we should be talking to, and I'm sure there are other Lombardos or. others.
Can I just jump
Yes.
in here, Sam? I mean, I've been doing consultant soliciting for many years. My experience is, it's not so much the firm, it's the people that you get, okay? So you can have somebody that's very qualified that's at a small firm. And likewise, you could get a large firm that has many resources, but you got a guy that's a dud, okay? So I've had it both ways. It really boils down to soliciting a proposal, finding the qualifications, having interviews, that's the key, the interviews. And then making sure there's somebody that connects and is on the same page as everyone. So.
But I'll add on that, getting back to your question, but specifically about the size of experience. Oftentimes medium-sized or larger size firms started out as small firms.
Yeah.
So they often have experience as small, but also working with large, whereas smaller companies, not always, but tend to have smaller sort of projects. So I'm gonna respectfully disagree about the turnover issue, Claire, because I think if someone's turning over, that means they're going to somewhere else and you're still gonna get the talent. So the only thing you have to worry about turnover is if they start working on a project and they leave in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That could be the problem, but we just need to look at how long of a project would this be.
Yeah.
So and then everything goes that is interview the person.
People who have done projects of the size that we're looking at certainly have experience there. Trade-off for me, I'm much older and wiser than I used to be, and I have a lot less energy tanks. Yeah, so how do you value those projects?
Yeah, I would say also like the due diligence in finding somebody, a few towns who have just done plants in the last 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
Who'd you use? Do you love them, or was it they sucked? I mean, this trying to get a handle, because if you're moving to town and you want a builder, you ask all the neighbors who's used for a builder, and you wait to find something, he's the best. And the same thing with these engineering companies. If town had a great experience with this engineering company and you're doing something similar, that's kind of, and maybe you get two people to say same thing.
Who knows that? Does DEP actually have a list of people who've done comprehensive plans recently that you look at and say?
I'll bet they have a list that you have to be qualified to do it properly.
Yeah, I asked and they didn't, now this was just Worcester, they didn't have, they had a couple, I guess. I think Littleton was one that they mentioned that they had worked on, and I think there were one or two others. We can give them a call. They were very helpful when we talked to them.
You could have a couple of options there to talk to seriously about it. Yeah, let's see what's going on. Is that something, Brian, you think a big firm would be very interested in doing, or?
I think it would depend on,
What are you calling big first?
yeah, but
No, like Stan saying.
How many employees?
so we're 30,000, right? Right, but you know, not every project that we do is a mega $1 million project that has 200 staff members designated to it. There's a lot of smaller studies. I mean, we'll do $10,000 studies for small municipalities as well. So, and again, I think Bill hit it. It's finding the right people you get in the firms. So,
But and again, I think we have here at least 3 or 4 people who've done that enough to sort of judge the quality of the talent.
Yep.
That we're talking to. So.
you know, I guess I'll put it this way. It's the same way that 2 of my daughters, one graduated from Penn State, one's there currently, and they talk about, you know, going to such a big school. And you have the ability to make a big school small.
Yeah.
You don't have the ability to make a small school big, you know, so you can get a big firm that also focuses in on small projects. You know, at her school, you know, my middle daughter, her advisor reached out to her over the summer before she even set foot on campus to talk to her and all that. So you have the ability to do that small. It's how you do it, it's how you manage it. Just because it's a big firm doesn't mean that every single project is big. But if it gets to be a large project, that's where some of the limitations come into play with smaller firms as well. So.
Claire has her hand up.
Oh, yeah, thanks. My question is, in narrowing down the list of the firms that you want to speak to through, like, so to speak, the interview process. Does it make sense, and you guys are the engineers who know this, does it make sense to do that in the short term so that whoever seems to be the firm that you're looking at also writes the application?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I think between now and the 4th of June, we're gonna be mostly on our own for writing the application. And then I think after June, we can start talking, assuming we think we're gonna get some money. What do you guys
Don't
think?
have a lot of short-term money either.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to move forward with getting the expression of interest in immediately. And we're not gonna have the ability to bring somebody on board for June. I think it makes sense for us to have discussions with Weston and Sampson and Lombardo just to talk about the work that they've done already. You know, once we get to the point where, you know, if we know we're going to move forward, and I assume we would go with an RFQ
Yeah.
to select a firm to do the comprehensive study for us. I think that's where, you know, it would go out to the larger engineering community, and those firms would make a decision, you know, is this a project we want to pursue, yes or no? And if so, then we can receive their proposals and interview them.
And from a timing standpoint, it would be great, again, to aim toward special town meeting in the fall.
Yeah.
For money for this.
Mhm.
So that, I'm not quite sure how that could work, in the sense that, with an initial look to get a rough idea of the cost, and then do the RFP, RFQ, whatever, maybe summer here, and have something to go to special town meeting with in terms of specific costs.
Yeah, that's a new tricky part, is knowing how much to ask for.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we talk to a couple of Weston and Sampson and Lombardo, and maybe one other, we'll have at least ballpark of what we think it's gonna cost.
As Bob suggests, there are towns who've done this.
Yeah.
Fairly recently.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you can ask them how much it cost them to get to.
Problem, I don't know, like everybody's doing them down the Cape, but I don't know up around here. I can't think of somebody who just put it in a treatment plant.
I think it's limited here
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
area.
everything.
They all did it in the 70s.
Everything was done in the 70s, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and they're doing upgrades on that which they built all
I
the.
know I see Chatham as they're putting pipes up and down, they're very close to my house now. Weston and Sampson Weston and Sampson, is it?
Yeah.
They stay on as the permanent like operator engineer of everything going on down there. You know, I don't know what all their duties are, but they have their own trucks right at the Department of Public Works. You know, they leave there overnight, you know, and then they come in the morning in their cars and they take their trucks out. So, but I'd be happy, I mean, I'm gonna be down there this weekend, but, I know the people over there, I can ask them, this is how I'll call Orleans, I'll just ask who did all the stuff for them. You know, and start getting some names and say, what do you think? Cause it seems like all this, I don't think it's regional, like, I don't think there's like somebody who's down the Cape, I think everybody up here would do the Cape, maybe at the Cape would do.
It'll be all over New England,
Yeah.
yeah. That actually brings to one other thing, which we at least had a very, very preliminary discussion about. Is that it is, and depending on, you know, what our debt situation looks like with the schools is maybe a very attractive option. Is to actually have this, the system done privately. And yeah, which is common in mid-Atlantic states. It is not common in New England. It's probably never been done, and you know, because it's a modern idea that we don't like. But,
Too sensible.
well, they operate as essentially no different than the gas company or the electric company that regulate the utility. And we do have one group that's Veolia, who has a group who does that. I think it would be useful to talk to them.
Yeah, they operate the Westboro plant, but they also have an outfit that actually does the full deal. Which again is an interesting idea. If they finance it and it's regulated from the standpoint of rates, you know, you're less exposed in terms of them coming in and jacking up the rates annually by 50%.
Who gets all these easements? It's probably gonna be 1,000 easements.
Town
that need to be done.
Yeah,
The town can do that and then hire a private company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can take property. It's not trivial or simple. We did take a little bit of property for the Main Street thing.
Well, I suspect it's mostly easements,
Yeah, oh yeah, easements.
but you know, when you go on Route 9, easements are gonna be complicated probably.
Yep.
yeah, it's but it is. The big advantage there is the town is, you know, currently facing building a school, and that's we'll use a massive portion of our borrowing capacity.
Kathy Cook has her hand up.
Pardon?
Kathy Cook has her hand up.
Oh,
She's in the audience. Yeah.
can bring her over.
I think I,
Yeah, she's over. She's now unmuted.
Okay, so I'm there?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I don't know why you don't see me, but who cares? This is quick. So one source of private financing for projects like this is private equity itself. So private equity firms, some, not all, but several have infrastructure groups, and this is the type of thing that they invest in. I don't know if this one's big enough or not, but that's at least worth a look at to see if that would be a source of being able to finance this without our money.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what Veolia actually does, is they, you know, they put together a package, not unlike when you do a big residential apartment development, you know, the builder isn't the one who finances it, it's a syndicate of some form. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going, that's all I wanted to say, so thank you
Yeah.
guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, I think we got the action items right now, which is, we'll meet next Thursday, at 6:30. And, we'll probably, I'll find a place. It might well be here. We'll try and do it virtually. I've got an action item to talk to Mark about our grant consultant to make sure that, you know, we have the right sort of person for writing the actual, June 4th document. And, I'll get in touch with Westboro again, and Sam, can I ask you to contact Marlboro?
Yeah.
And Bobby, you're gonna go and chat with the folks down on
I
the
got 3
Cape,
of them down there.
down on the Cape. And I think that's it.
And I will pursue our friendly resident who.
Oh, yes, yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay, and, and the other thing is, I think we do need to get to the state, to the real estate guys, the guys you know.
Yeah, I'll ping him.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that consumed by the cave in and the pike. Last week, so he's still recovering. Like, there's a sinkhole out there. That shut the thing down. We were sort of.
Okay.
One sort of.
Claire?
Okay, I'll be quick. If you're going to talk to Mark about a proposal for the grant consultant that they already have on board, would you also entertain a proposal for writing the grant from like Lombardo or another firm?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, if I get back to Lombardo and just tell them this is what, happened at the meeting, and they know one stop, so that's not a problem. And then they can put together what their cost would be for a proposal.
Okay,
Okay,
You want us,
thanks.
we're gonna need for a conversation with Weston Sampson and Lombardo.
yeah, I think we want to also set up sort of a Zoom of some sort with Lombardo to sort of go over their report and talk about,
How
Do
they
you-
might work with us.
You want to set it up for next Thursday night?
yeah,
No reason not to, I don't.
yeah.
Maybe have the name to keep it to about 30 minutes and then we use.
Oh,
some time-
absolutely. Yep. Okay,
One question I had was, when it comes to one stop, with some of these other sort of application processes, there's only a specific person in town who can apply. Like, you can't just log in and say, I'm gonna apply, like, it has to be either like your
You're
town
right.
administrator. or
yeah.
town manager. So do we know which one that is for one stop?
I've been talking to Vanessa about it, so,
Okay.
Probably Mark.
yeah, it'll be either Vanessa or Mark.
So when we have the 500 character thing written up, we need to make sure that
Yeah,
we're asking the favor that they submit it on time, it's the right person.
Claire knows how to make that happen.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with one thought on that. If the deadline is, whatever the deadline is, don't wait until the last minute. They've had problems with everybody, is into the same system. Vanessa's the only one who can get into the system. She needs to have it started a week before that. I just from experience. Because
Claire,
this-
sorry, Claire, do you know if we have a template of the application itself?
yes, and what I can do, what I did was, and I'll send it out to you guys. I actually put together, I sent it earlier, but I'll resend it. What the different templates are for the different departments that you're looking to get funding from. This goes back to the expression of interest, and then they have 3 or 4 different templates. So like, if you're looking to do wayfinding, that's a completely different thing. If you're looking to do what we're working on here, that's something else. If you're looking to do something with a private company, that's another template. So they're customized.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just reach out to me. I can provide you with all that stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Give me tomorrow off. It's the last day of my 3-day vacation. So.
No,
And I'll
no
be
rest
re-
for the weary.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, guys.
all right. I think we're good.
Anything
Okay.
else?
All right, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'm sorry, is there any other business?
Oh, there's just one little top, this is stuff I think about. To me, the exciting part is what can you develop up and down Route 9, and gain this, personally, the flowage for your treatment plant, but more importantly, you're looking for new property taxes, mainly.
Mhm.
And so, there are all these vacant parcels that have different potential. And I think 2 things come up. One is there would be, it's very desirable, I think, to establish a whole new zoning up and down Route 9, which I know you've probably talked about. I think it might have been in that brochure, that report I got. But, and start thinking about allowing a lot of different uses, like, 4-story condominium building or 55 and older buildings, and it's not, I'm not trying to, apartments and everything like that, or that would be a good one. like all market rate, no 40Bs, so, just. If you want people to come in, there's a place if you look, Google Parsippany, New Jersey, right now, they're in a building boom. And they had zillions of office buildings built over the last, 40 years or whatever. They're in the process, they've approved like 14 projects with 2,100 housing units, condos, apartments. They're knocking down 2.2 million square feet of office buildings for all this new stuff. They got retail, they got some commercial stuff, and they're reinventing the whole town because it was stale. They had office parks with third full, and the pit taxes were nothing.
That sounds familiar.
And they came up with all this new zoning, and all the developers have jumped on it. And I'm sure, Sewer, they have that. But it was kind of creative, in other words, like if you let somebody build a 4-story, 90-unit condo product, condos that's for sale. I mean, they'll probably have 6 kids in that whole thing. But, each unit sells for $600,000 and $700,000, and it's a shitload of taxes. But it's no kids in school. Or you could even do apartments instead of doing the 40B with you could just do market rate apartments. They'll have a higher rent, they can have more amenities, and they also don't have, like, my Madison Place only has 17 kids in the school, and out of 168 apartments. So, and I think my friend who bought it's complaining, I left paying $600,000 in taxes, and he's heading towards the $1 million mark with only 17 kids in the school. So even if it's $15,000 a kid, it's one hell of a nice deal. And then density too, just how many parking spaces, we use some garages. But there needs to be a whole fun session of what are all the different things that could go in these things, and including if you have to write a mix of stuff, these if somebody's office buildings will get knocked down.
Yeah, Bob, I think that's a key part of the selling process, because we're gonna need money from the town to do this eventually. And I think creating that picture, say, here's what we're gonna create here in terms of infrastructure. What that does is it leverages the value of properties outside, both combination of infrastructure and zoning changes. It'll generate this much tax revenue, whatever that number turns out to be. And I think one could draw a very exciting picture.
Oh, I do.
That way, and we can work on that in parallel, because we're gonna need to, again, reinforce with people that this is something that's gonna help basically the residential taxpayers and have minimal impact. We're not sending traffic through the neighborhoods and opening up shopping opportunities for people nearby here. I think how people think wants it. There'll always be people who resist anything that you want to do. And again, I think overall, I think this got huge benefit.
Yeah, I think you could 4 or 5-fold what you got now,
Yeah.
In tax, valuations,
Yeah.
if not 10-fold.
Yeah.
When you add in the MPP, you really do something.
Yeah.
But it'd be creative, and some people say, well, I don't want a 4-story condo building on Route 9, but they're gonna be paying, X numbers of millions a year to your town.
Yeah.
And
But being able to tell that story effectively and correctly in terms of here's what the economics look like, I think is a key part of it.
that is the main purpose of this whole group, right? Okay,
All right.
nice meeting everybody, thank
Well,
you.
you two, is there a motion to
Oh,
adjourn?
sorry. So moved.
Okay, second, okay. Brian,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Claire,
I'd love to, but I just have one other quick thing. I'm sorry, my internet
Uh.
connection dropped. Can I just say one real quick thing?
sure.
Has any thought been given to One Stop, following on what Bob Moss said? Has any thought been given to applying, because you can apply for more than one grant, to getting funding for a professional planning company to come in and do exactly what Bob just lined out in terms of what happens to be done? This is on the long range with the planning board. They do not have the bandwidth to do it. And it's gonna hold zoning. The two big things were zoning and wastewater. Okay, so just think about that, and we can talk about it next time around at the next meeting.
Ideally.
Does anybody have a question on what I just said?
Nope. I think that we've talked in the past about, are you better off with one-stop expression of interest or proposal or multiples?
I respectfully disagree. And the reason is I got this right from Rob Anderson. Okay. You can put in as many expression of interests as you want. It does, I mean, you don't want to do 8, 9, or 10, but 3 or 4, and I specifically asked Rob about the number. 3 or 4 or 5 is fine, as long as obviously they're not competing, and these are not competing EOIs. And then the last thing that I'll say is I went through all of the grant awards from One Stop for FY 23, 24, and 25. And there is money out there that's being given to similar towns to put together exactly what Bob just talked about.
Let's add that to the EOI list. Can we? Yeah. Do 2 of them.
But I think in
Well,
fact,
is that
there is a corridor
within the
study.
charge or within the confines of our charge?
No,
Okay.
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not saying. it
Okay,
doesn't need to
all
be
right,
done.
well,
Yeah, we're in
Somebody
agreement.
needs to take a look at it.
Yeah, but it'd be a shame not to actually have that story developed as we go along, because I
Yeah.
think that, to me, it's part of selling this.
Yeah,
Town
and-
funded.
And
That-
determining capacities and all that kind of stuff.
Well, there is a Route 9 corridor study. And I thought that was part of the Route 9 corridor study, but maybe I'm wrong.
Nope,
I
nope,
haven't
nope.
paid a lot of attention
Okay,
to it.
I'll put the information together and send it out to you guys.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
thank you
All right.
very much.
So now, Claire, you get to vote on adjourning.
Absolutely. Do it.
Alan,
Yes, I.
Bob,
Yes.
Al's aye.
Sam's
All
aye.
right, excellent.
Sure.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye
Thank you,
all.
Bill.
All right.
Right.